Hello, I'm Tony Nichols and I'm the Federal Programs Director at Nicholas County Schools. And we'd like to thank SCTV and Chantel for broadcasting several of our video lessons for our students. We're hoping to reach out to students who might have issues with internet. And the upcoming sessions you're going to see are all about writing, handwriting, and also some creative writing. But I wanted to share with you some things about writing that might help you when you're working with your child at home. First of all, just like reading, we should do writing every day. Some type of writing every day. We also need to know that writing is very connected to reading. There's an old saying that if you can write it, then you can read it. When you're working with your child, you want to make sure that you teach them the proper pencil grip, and you want to support them, and you want to monitor them so that they're using an appropriate grip. Number 4 is very important. When students are learning to write their letters, they need to learn how to write the letter in steps, and they need to repeat those steps the same way every time they write the letter. Sometimes students have difficulty remembering where to start the letter or how to end the letter. But always watch your child when they're writing and make sure that they write the letter the same way each time. Number 5 is important. We get a lot of questions about that. Once a child's determined what their dominant hand is, make sure they use that hand. Don't encourage them or force them to switch from their non-dominant hand. Number 6 is also really important when you're working with your student at home or your child at home on writing. You want to make sure that the child is sitting beside of you, not across the table from you. If they're sitting across the table from you and you're writing, then they're going to see everything backwards. And sometimes you might wonder, why is my child writing backwards? Well, it may simply just be because they've observed you writing from across the table. Number 7, just to make writing really interesting, use multiple writing tools, use different kinds of writing paper. If you want actual handwriting paper, you can always download it from the internet. And also on your iPhones and your iPads, if you'll do an app search, there are all kinds of really nice apps for teaching kids how to write letters appropriately. And number 10, practice, practice, practice. So we hope these writing sessions will be very helpful to you while you're working with your child at home.
Hello, boys and girls. It's good to see you today. My name is Miss Johnson, and I teach in Braxton County, and I teach writing all over the place. I love writing. I even have write on my license plate of my car. That's how much I love it. Since it's lightning season, we are going to read 2 texts about lightning and talk about lightning and electricity. And then we're going to do a really fun activity. So if you'd like to join in, get a pencil, a pen, something to write with, and some paper. And you can do this activity at home. You probably have everything you need. You just need salt and pepper, and a comb, and a bowl. Okay. First, let's do a See, Think, Wonder. I bet you're wondering what this is, so let's talk about it a little bit. All right, so when we do a See, Think, Wonder, if you're not sure what that is, when we get to the see part, just tell me exactly what you see on the picture. And when we get to the think part, tell me what you think about it. And when we get to wonder, we'll talk about what we wonder when we look at it. Okay, let's do see first. Okay, what do we see when we look at that picture? Oh, I think I heard someone mention a collar, brown. Yeah, it's brown. And yeah, black too. Looks kind of burnt, doesn't it? And I see, it looks like it's bent. or curved. And, oh, someone saw what I saw. It's pointed. It's pointed on the end. So those are some things we see about it. Now let's move to the think part. Now, when you're saying your sentence, say, I think. So what do you think of when you look at that picture? I think that it might be made of metal. What else do you think about that? Oh, somebody thinks that it might be a tool. Okay. Okay, let's jump over to the wonder part. Now, when you look at that, what kind of questions form in your head? I wonder, well, I kind of wonder why it's bent like that. Now notice I'm not writing complete sentences, I'm note-taking right now. So you can see I don't have a complete sentence, and that's okay when you're note-taking. So I wonder why it's bent. And and I'm kind of thinking, well, I wonder why it's pointed like that. You see, it's blunt on this end and pointed on this end. Okay, so we have, I see something brown, black, bent, pointed, and I think that it might be metal. I think it might be a tool. And I wonder why it's bent. I wonder why it's pointed. Can anyone guess what that is? That is a lightning rod. And this picture will kind of get our noggins going for what's coming up in our stories and our activity. And that lightning rod was invented by Ben Franklin. Okay. I have a book. It's our first text, and it's called When Charlie McButton Lost Power. And it's written by Suzanne Collins. She's the author. And she also wrote the Hunger Games trilogy. So if you like those, you might check this one out. And it's illustrated by Mike Lester. And it's a story all about this boy. The lightning strikes a tower nearby and they lose power. And he can't play on his computer or anything. But his little sister saves the day. And like I said, it's a poem. It's written in poem form, so you're going to hear some rhyming words. But first, before we read Charlie McButton, let's take a look at some vocabulary words first. You'll hear that he has like-nots. And like-nots, these are just things that he doesn't like. It's just a fun way to say it. And bots, that just means his robots and things like that. AAA, those are batteries. I bet you all have seen those. And surge is when something goes through something very quickly or goes towards something. Okay, let's go ahead and read our really interesting story. Now it's a fiction story, although what happened in the story can really happen in real life. Charlie McButton had likes and like-nots. The things that he liked involved handsets and bots, computerized games where he battled bad creatures. The things that he liked not didn't have blow-up features. Then one day, a thunderstorm blew into town and brought his tech empire tumbling down. A lightning bolt struck an electrical tower, and Charlie McButton, his whole world lost power. There it is, the lightning striking the tower. He looked left, he looked right, and his heart filled with dread. The TV, the lights, and his clock were all dead. He jumped to his feet, his lungs gasping for air. The room spun around and he clung to his chair. He tried to cry, "Help!" but just managed a squeak. The blackout had blacked out his power to speak. Thank goodness his mother had ears like a bat. She came to his room and she gave him a pat. "Oh, Charlie," she said, picking up on his fears, "the lights will come back on when the bad weather clears. You'll have to find something without plugs to play. Read a book, clean your room, sing a song, model clay." Could anything be duller than clay? Soggy, gray clay on a soggy, gray day. He hated the way clay got under his nails and how he could only make snowmen and snails. He dove for a gadget he'd outgrown last spring. It was handheld, outdated, not much of a thing. But he clutched the old toy like a lifeline that day. See, it ran on one battery. The size? AAA. He flicked the on-off switch to on double quick. But no happy humming sound followed the click. He unlatched the hatch and his blood turned to ice. "The battery is gone from my backup device." World records were set in the 10-meter dash. As away down the hallway he flew like a flash, seeking one battery, just one AAA, that would rescue one boy from a gray day of clay. But just when his search nearly drove him insane, he ran past the bedroom of Isabel Jane. His 3-year-old sister was happily walking, a doll back and forth, and the doll, it was talking. Now, dolls didn't talk on their own as a rule. They needed a power source, some kind of fuel. In less than a second, he had made his decision. Call it bad judgment or real lack of vision. Somehow, his head didn't warn of his folly, and Charlie McButton, he pounced on that dolly. He plucked out his prize through the baby doll's dress, and Isabel Jane made a sound of distress. It was just a short walk to the foot of the stair, where resided the McButton time-out time chair. To add to the fun of his term in the seat, Isabel Jane came to play at his feet. And Isabel Jane, the battery queen, had more AAAs than he had ever seen. They powered her puppies, they powered her clocks, they powered her talkative alphabet blocks. Assaulted by nonstop mechanical chatter, Charlie McButton got madder and madder. He snapped at his sis from his time-out time zone. "How come you can't ever just leave me alone?" Her eyes filled with tears, and she gave them a rub. She went to the bathroom and hid in the tub. When Charlie McButton felt totally rotten and couldn't help thinking some things he had forgotten. Mainly, he thought that for sisters that toddle, Isabel Jane was a pretty good model. She clearly adored him. She didn't have fleas. At dinner, she secretly ate up his peas. And sometimes, although he'd mostly hotly deny it, he liked to just sit there beside her in quiet, wrapped up in a blanket, watching TV, her head on his shoulder, her foot on his knee. He sat and he thought, and he stared at the rain. When his time out was done, he found Isabel Jane. From the edge of the tub, she gave him a peek. So he said, "Hey, are we playing hide and go seek?" She was happy at once and ran into the hall, as she loved playing hide and go seek most of all. They took turns being it and counting to 10. They hid in the plants and the guinea pig pen. And when he found Isabel Jane in her quilt, they decided a big blanket fort should be built. Then the gloom made him think about dragons and spells. So Charlie became the great wizard McSmells, and Isabel Jane, who desired a role, magically changed to his faithful old troll. Between tracking down dragons and brewing up lizards and handling the day-to-day business of wizards, like forging his faithful old troll the new sword, Charlie McButton forgot to be bored. At supper, they ate by real candlelight. The daytime had melted right into the night, and after they had all been asleep in an hour, the world came alive with a big surge of power. "Oh, it's finally back," Charlie thought with a grin. "Tomorrow I'll wake up and I can plug in." But another thought hit him he couldn't explain. He might also find dragons with Isabel Jane. It's a good story, wasn't it? Okay, the next text I have, it's also about lightning and electricity. And as we talked before about our lightning rod, Ben Franklin was the one who invented this certain type of lightning rod. And so I found this on the internet. So if you want to know more about Ben Franklin, you can get on the internet and research him because he did a lot of things. He edited the Declaration of Independence. He had a lot of other inventions too. But this one's all about the lightning rod and electricity. Okay, before we start though, I have a couple of words to, vocabulary words to go over with you so we'll know what they're talking about. Right here is the word divert. He's diverting something in this story. I wonder what that'll be. You can see if you can predict that. But divert means to send it somewhere else. And current is electricity that flows through something. Okay, so let's read and find out what it's going to flow through and what he's going to divert. Okay. Ben Franklin and the lightning rod. Long ago, in the year 1752, Ben Franklin raced from his house as a nearby home burst into flames during a lightning storm. Ben put his hand on his neighbor's shoulder. "Thomas, there's got to be a way to prevent homes from catching fire when hit by lightning." Thomas furrowed his brows. "Don't think it's possible. How do you control lightning? But you're a scientist and inventor. If anyone can figure it out, you can." Ben put his hands in his pockets and went back into his home. He knew lightning was a form of electricity, and from his experiment with the kite, Ben had once tied a key to a kite and sent it up during a thunderstorm. Don't you all try that at home. The lightning struck the key which confirmed that lightning was electrical. If the metal key attracts the lightning, maybe something can be made to attract and divert it from harming homes. He sat at his desk and started writing notes. The next morning, Ben went to his office. "Good morning, William. We have work to do. Take these notes. Let me know what you think," he said to his assistant. William took the notes from Ben and sat at his desk. After a while, he scratched his head. "Ben, I think you have something here. We just have to figure out how to divert the lightning through the rod safely to the ground." Yes, that's the dilemma. Ben began to jot down more notes. What if, nah, that won't work. He jotted down some more notes, then got up and paced the floor. Ben stopped short and threw his arms in the air. "I've got it. We'll divert the electrical current with a wire. The lightning will strike the rod, then the current will travel through the wire and right into the ground. This will prevent the sparks from the lightning causing a fire." Ben and his assistant began drafting images of rods and wires to be put on top of buildings. When they felt their design was perfected, they went to work building it. Ben took it home to test it out. Each day, Ben looked for a brewing storm. He decided to test it out on his own home before making it available to others. Finally, a thunderstorm brought heavy winds, torrential rains, and lots of thunder. Ben stood inside the tool shed watching and hoping for a direct hit. Boom! A strong lightning bolt hit the rod. Ben held his breath and watched. Then he breathed a sigh of relief. It worked. His house was safe. After that night, Ben started producing lightning rods and wires. Soon, they could be seen atop many buildings and homes. They were so effective that a very large one was constructed on the dome of the State House in Maryland. Interesting, isn't it? Okay. Now, we're going to do a little comparing and contrasting. When you have two things, we have two texts that we read, you can compare and contrast them, find out how they're different, each one is different, and how they're the same. So we'll put our differences here, and if you want to join me and write too, you can. And we'll put the things that are the same that they have in common right there. Okay, so let's think about this. Let's look at, let's see if we can find some text evidence about some things that was different in the Charlie McButton story. Oh, right here, he talked about a tower in his world. It was the tower that got hit. So, oh, and over here, he had computers and games, computerized games. So we could put those as something different. Let's see. Okay. Electrical tower, and he had computers and bots and all sorts of things. And another thing that I noticed, remember in the other story, the Ben Franklin story, it took place a long time ago, back in 1700s. This one, we can tell, took place today because we kind of dress like wear those types of clothes today, don't we? So it took place today. And now let's go over to our other text about Ben Franklin, let's find some text evidence and see if we can, let's see. Oh, I know one thing that he definitely did different. He invented a lightning rod. And let's see, right, we can find that in our text too. Oh, there it talks about the lightning rod. Right here it talks about the lightning rod. And another thing, in his story, it didn't hit a tower, it hit someone's home, didn't it? And let's see, the Charlie McButton story took place today, so the one with Ben Franklin took place in the 1700s, a long time ago. None of us were born back then, were we? Now, what about how were they the same? They were both about lightning. And they both caused destruction. One hit the tower, one hit the house, burned the house down, and the tower knocked out all of the power in the town. So it was destructive. And how did they both feel when that happened? I know Charlie was very frustrated because he lost all of his computerized things. And then Ben, he was frustrated because he wanted to help people. He didn't want anyone else's house to burn down. So they were both kind of frustrated. Okay, so here's how they are different. Under Charlie, an electrical tower was struck. He lost his computerized toys, and it happened today. And the things that were different for Ben Franklin, he invented the lightning rod. The homes burned down, struck by lightning and burned, and it was way back in the 1700s. And here is where the things that were the same that they had in common. Lightning, the lightning was destructive, and they were both very frustrated. Okay. Okay, next we are going to use our information, our text evidence that we have on our Venn diagram. We're going to use that to write a letter. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about letter writing first before I tell you what we're going to do. And you can join in on this part with make sure you have pencil and paper. There are certain parts to letter writing. A letter has a greeting, a date, the body, that's what is in what you're trying to tell the person that you're writing the letter to, and then you have to close it out, and then it has a signature. What I thought we would do, let's have Charlie McButton write a letter asking Ben Franklin for help, so that he would no longer, if lightning struck the tower, he would never lose his computerized toys ever again. So let's have him write to Ben Franklin and see if he can help him out, maybe help him install a lightning rod on the tower. Now, Ben Franklin wouldn't really be alive today, so we're just pretending. Okay, so our greeting, start off your letter. Dear, and he's writing a letter to Ben. Dear Ben. And then always put a comma after that, after your greeting. And today's date is May, I think it's the 22nd. May 22nd, 2020. And now let's start writing. Let's use our text evidence and write a letter to Ben. Okay, now the body, the whole body, has to do with what kind of details do you want to tell the person that you're writing the letter to. In this case, it's Charlie writing to Ben. Okay, so our details that we wrote on our Venn diagram, he needs to tell Ben that the lightning struck his tower, doesn't he? Yeah, so let's say lightning struck a tower and I lost power. Oh, that kind of rhymes like our story, doesn't it? Lightning struck a tower and I lost power. Okay, the next thing that he could tell him, what happened when he lost power? Yes, he couldn't play with any of his computer games. So let's tell him that. I couldn't play with my computer games. And what else? What are we wanting from Ben? What's he wanting from Ben Franklin? Yeah, he wants him to bring a lightning rod over and put it on the tower so that it won't be struck anymore. So you invented a lightning rod to keep it from striking objects. Okay, so here are the details so far that he shared with Ben. Dear Ben, lightning struck a tower and I lost power. I couldn't play with my computer games. You invented a lightning rod to keep it from striking objects. Now, let's ask Ben that question, that important question. Let's see. We could ask him, how could a lightning rod be installed so the tower won't get struck? Something like that. And if you have another sentence you would like to write that says the same thing, you can do that. Okay, so here's our question. How could a lightning rod be installed, that's a good word, installed on the tower? And now we come to our closing when we end our letter. And a lot of times when you come to your closing, if you're asking someone something for something, a lot of times you can just end it with a thank you. So, thank you for inventing the lightning rod so the tower won't get struck again. Okay, and now we can sign our name. That's your signature. And a lot of times people will put something like sincerely Charlie. And that makes a nice letter, doesn't it? Let's read the whole thing, make sure it sounds right, and let's make sure that we have capital letters at the beginning of each sentence, and make sure we have our punctuation. You know, we asked a question here, so, and look what Miss Johnson forgot, her question mark. See why it's always really important to go back and look? Okay, dear Ben, lightning struck a tower and I lost power. I couldn't play with my computer games. You invented a lightning rod to keep it from striking objects. How could a lightning rod be installed on the tower? Thank you for inventing the lightning rod so the tower won't get struck again. Sincerely, Charlie. That sounds like a great letter, doesn't it? Okay. All right, good job. And now we have one last thing to do. We get to do our electricity experiment, and there are different types of electricity. And this is static electricity that we'll be looking at. Okay, all you need, again, is salt and pepper, a comb, and a bowl. Make sure your bowl's not very deep, though. It's a shallow bowl. Okay, pour some salt into your bowl. It doesn't have to be a lot. And let's pour some pepper into the bowl, and I'm just going to mix it up with my finger. Now, you may have noticed if you have a balloon and you rub it up against your hair and your hair sticks straight out, that's kind of what's going to happen with our comb. And you could try it with different objects. You might try this with a balloon. But we're going to get some static electricity going here. Okay, now what's going to happen is when I put my comb over the bowl, all of the pepper is going to separate from the salt, and it's going to jump right up on this comb. It's really neat. Okay, are you ready? Here we go. Oh, there it goes. It's hopping right. Oh, some of it's popping out. Wow. That's pretty neat. Okay, and that's another way to show static electricity. Okay, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye, stay safe. Miss you all.